all have this kind of like polarity inside of us, and
Yeah, and we tend to like to focus on the bad versus the good, and I've been trying to rewire myself to like focus more on the good, but we'll do a little check. Just pull that a little bit closer.
Check.
Yeah, can you hear me good?
Yeah.
Awesome. So is it loud enough? Is it too loud? Is like my voice like too overbearing?
I like it. It sounds good.
Good.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, like a lot of people are kind of focused, and like a lot of people at work are from that area too originally. So, or like their original families from there. So I know there's a lot of emotion in the office lately, and as like a Canadian kind of sitting, like I don't know, like what is there to do? Like what can how can we do it? And I really don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's bringing a lot to the surface for a lot of people of feelings that we have in our shadow and things that are hard to acknowledge, whether it comes from our history and, maybe even just like our nature as humans, right? And so I think it's a call for us to kind of step outside of ourselves as an individual and say, okay, there are these elements of darkness inside of me and inside of all of us, learning to acknowledge so we can integrate those things. And that's been a big part of my practice throughout my whole life as, a woman and a spiritual being who kind of discovered these esoteric pieces of information throughout my personal exploration as ways to kind of like overcome my shadow, because shame was just my predominant story, and that part of that story will keep you stuck if you're living in it. I find that's I don't know, tread lightly here for whoever's watching, but like I find like we're too stuck in the rear view mirror too, like for me. Like, and I find like even in your own personal life, if you're always dwelling on like the bad stuff you've done or the mistakes, it's like, it's good to kind of acknowledge that stuff has happened, but it doesn't have to define you, because like the person you are today isn't who you were even yesterday. Absolutely.
You can move forward, you can be better, you can learn from those mistakes. But I find a lot of people just like to get stuck there. And it's not very productive. Like you got to maybe stay there for a bit so you figure it out. But once you figure it out, like move on. And I'm guilty of it. I've made a lot of changes in my personal life, and just the last, even say 6 months to a year. And if we look a little further back, like since the pandemic. So and it's tough sometimes to make big changes, and because what was once what you thought your life was is now it's not, and maybe some people are there, maybe they're not, and it's like, sometimes you feel bad about letting people go or letting things go because it was so familiar that you feel like just because it's been there for so long it deserves to still be there, but it's not necessarily the case. But we're getting a little little deep into it already, but I just wanted to clarify one thing. It's Kiersten. And your Instagram is Hattrix?
Yeah, Kiersten Hackett. It's kind of like a play on my last name, Hackett.
Okay, I thought it was Hackett. Okay, cool. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Hackett, but I wanted to clarify because Instagram says Hattrix. Yeah.
I know, it's a tough one to say. I'm like, do I change it? I don't know. But I like that identity. It's the kind of like life hacking / creatrix, and then a play on my last name.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Halifax Network, Kiersten.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. I know we've talked. It's been a little while, but like I said, I wanted to kind of get some of the content out so you didn't have to wait so long for your episodes. So I appreciate your patience in coming on.
Yeah, no, it's good timing for me. It's I've been super excited about this, and I'm on that journey of, figuring things out and the ways that I can be in service to, the collective and my community. It's very important to me. So I'm excited to touch more on those things. I've been on lots of adventures.
Yeah.
Had a very kind of unique perspective to share.
Yeah, and I've been kind of following along from afar because for, those that don't know us or you anyway, we've kind of met like probably it's been over like 10 years now. I kind of ran into you at St. Mary's.
Yeah, at the gym there.
Yeah, and it kind of went from there, and we kind of had some pass cross in like the bodybuilding industry, and you know, you were kind of one of my test models for like when I was in the photography thing, which you know some people probably don't even know about because I don't even really talk about it that much. It was something that kind of culminated from the bodybuilding days, and I'd started kind of really recording just life, and got into bodybuilding, and next thing people were like, oh, you're a photographer, have you ever done, you know, like bodybuilding photography? And I was like, no, I have no idea how to even do it. And then but I was like, I'm sure I could, and kind of that one thing led to another. I kind of get into that, and you know, kind of as you kind of meandered through that bodybuilding culture, and you know, some was great. I think I learned a lot. I think we could probably both say we've learned a lot about ourselves and other people, and, you know, the good and the bad from that industry. But I had to take a step back because I found it, and I'm sure, I mean, I can't speak for you, but I found it wasn't the industry I wanted to be in, or in quite the culture that I wanted to pursue long term. So kind of made a hard pivot out of that. But
yeah, similar for me, but no regrets, right? Like so much from that world.
Definitely a learning overall. And I mean the discipline and, you know, the learning of how to, you know, I guess eat and count calories and you
for
know,
better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse, exactly. Some people get a little bit too enthralled in that, and it becomes another issue. But why don't we just jump right into it? I always like to start off a little bit about you. This is very much about kind of you and what's been going on. So why don't you give a little bit of an introduction, like kind of your background, where you're from originally?
Yeah. So I am originally from Beaverbank. And
we're not too far from home.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. So Sackville area. And yeah, I mean, I've always been very much like a free spirit, free thinker. And that came with a lot of sense of entitlement as a kid as well.
Is that right?
Definitely, for sure it did. You know, big sister, and then experienced a lot of, you know, life upset at some young ages, some transformative ages, 7, 10. My parents split. And so I had a lot of just kind of uncertainty about life and big questions. And that kind of stuff has really guided me to where I am now. Because, you know, we have to heal and integrate like we were talking about. And I also recently went on this big van life adventure, which was very much a trip of self-discovery. You know, I'm 31 years old and I'm still very much figuring things out, but I love to kind of share and transmit that journey. And I've had some really cool experiences to be able to do that and just like transmit my light and my joy and have, you know, receive the knowledge that that's like helpful to people and that it's contagious and it spreads. And so that's kind of my mission now, is just like this journey of becoming whole, and what does that mean and how do I transmit that and share it? And so, yeah, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm involved in a lot of stuff, and I can commiserate with the photography evolution too, because I've dabbled in that as well.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Yeah, obviously from the social media lens. But let's bring it back a little bit. So we met kind of initially at the St. Mary's University. If I recall correctly, you were involved in like the recruiting process.
Yeah, I was working in the recruitment department at SMU. One of the greatest things about SMU is that, like, you know, it's kind of like one of those second chance universities. Hoping no one's offended by me.
Yeah,
saying
hey, I'm a SMU grad. I don't care. Yeah,
but in a very positive way. Like, there's, you know, if you want to be like a big fish in a small pond there and create something, you can do that. And I had some really cool experiences to be able to, like, I started working in the recruitment department in my first year. I gave my first campus tour before I even had a class there. So it was it helped me a lot in kind of like my professional career. And now I'm doing sales for a tech startup.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how would you find, like, that whole experience in St. Mary's? Would you say it, what was some of the learnings and some of the good and the bad from that kind of got you to where kind of you are today?
Yeah. Well, the academic system, when you're in it, you really recognize it as a business, of course. And just a lot of kind of kids coming in there and not knowing exactly what they wanted to do, and being a coach for them through that process, and seeing a lot of kids that I really felt like, oh, I wish you would just go and, take a couple more years to figure it out before you make this massive investment.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you find that a lot of kids are coming there with no idea and they're just kind of jumping into whatever maybe mom and dad said was a good idea, and then next thing they're, several $1,000s in debt and they got to pivot?
Exactly.
And maybe it's another grab at something and it's not quite it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me it was very it was transformative. The education, maybe like, I did business marketing, and it was just such a pivotal time when what we were learning was maybe not the most relevant to the growing industry. And so, times have changed a lot, and it's very interesting, this free information world, and our energy is being so co-opted. And you can literally figure out anything. I know you use ChatGPT all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we got to learn how to use that and harness that and use our discernment. And so that's where I think the university structure is actually very good, is like teaching critical thinking and like a global perspective, and, gaining that knowledge and the experience. I got to travel. I got to go live in Mexico City when I was 23 years old, I think, or no, it was 21.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, and I went there totally by myself on a co-op. Like, it wasn't an education exchange where I was like at a university with other students. It was like, plop smack dab in the middle of Mexico City, like commuting an hour each way to the office that I was working at and stuff.
Wow,
so.
I didn't know you were in Mexico. I must have missed that.
Yeah. Well, you were definitely a few years ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I work with Garrett, who's one of your closest friends,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
So, and then we ran into each other at the airport a couple months back. So.
Yeah, and that's where I first asked, because I was curious about van life, and I always thought it was cool. I think you're the first person that I seen like get up and get after it and do it. So I hadn't even done an episode, or maybe I'd done one. I don't think I'd released anything yet.
Okay.
So when I seen you, I was like, hey, you've been doing some cool stuff. Why don't you come on? And you're like, I don't know if I have anything to offer.
Well, I think I knew you were doing stuff, but I was like, isn't it all real estate focused?
No,
I'm like, you want to talk to a girl that lives in a van?
Yeah. Well, on that note, why don't you bring me a little bit through like that van life kind of, how would we say, journey? Like, what started the idea? Like, when was it? Like, was it just like, hey, I'm gonna get a van, I'm gonna build it out, and I'm gonna give her? Like, what was the process there? What kind of drove you to want to do that?
Yeah, looking back, it was definitely one of the craziest things I've ever done in my life. And yeah, the draw. When I started in the pandemic, seeing this van life all over the place, it was really calling to me. I was like, oh my gosh, that is for me, just wide open road adventure. I've always been that kind of a free spirit, and just marching to the beat of my own drum. And so I decided that this was something that I was going to call in, manifest, for lack of a better term, and make it happen. And so that's when I kind of started the hunt for a van. And you quickly realize how expensive these things are if you want to actually be able to live in it. But the biggest motivation at the time was to live with less. So a big part, again, of my like personal growth journey of, learning and taking in these concepts, but then going out and saying, okay, how can I apply this to my life? How can I live a more minimalist lifestyle and do it just to give myself that reassurance that like, okay, these are uncertain times, but like all I really need is the things that I have on my back, and I'm going to be okay. And so I think solo travel is fantastic for that. And like I said, I've had a few of those experiences in my early life. So, I'm kind of like a throw caution to the wind type of person and just go out and do it. And I was putting this out into the universe. And so went and looked at one van in Toronto and almost bought that van until, the guy was like showing me a few things. And there was a few little things that were off about the deal, but it fit my budget. And I was like so obsessed with the idea of going out and doing this. That I was like, no, this is like, I need it. I need this van. I need to begin this journey. And I was forcing it a bit. And he flipped on the inverter switch and the thing just started smoking. And I was
no.
Yeah.
Red flag.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was kind of disheartening. And, but when I was in Toronto, I got to connect with a friend. And so it seems like, there's like these kismet things that happen when you set yourself out on a mission. And it's really cool to just kind of like open yourself up to be like, okay, I'm going to receive the signs and signals and follow those. And so acceptance is a big part of that process, of course. And I'm sure you know that, like helping people go through their own major life buying decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like we kind of have to work through letting go of that goal, but trusting that the thing is going to happen for you if you believe in it enough.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there's a couple people that exist in this world. I think there's the people that believe that they can and the people that believe that they can't. You just got to decide who or which one you are, and you just got to get after it.
Yeah. And then build up the evidence, right? So throughout this journey, I've started to do little things with myself, like recognizing, okay, what are tests? And when a test comes up, how am I going to overcome this test? So this is a test from the universe. This is not the right thing. This is the universe asking me to respond. How am I going to respond? Am I going to let this defeat me? Am I going to project negative energy onto others? Or am I just going to accept this and then, go to work? So yeah, it was very shortly after I returned from that Toronto trip that I found the van for me. Again, in my budget, so it was just $25,000 van, and a lot of it was still put on my line of credit. So still very chaotic, risky maneuvers that I was taking. But I had the van, and I had the job that involved a lot of travel, and I was kind of planting the seed there. And so pretty much as soon as the van showed up, they're like, okay, you've been talking about, wanting to hit the road in this thing. Are you ready to do it? Because we've lined up, 14 trade shows for you to attend across the United States. So come February, I was packed up and on the road.
Awesome. Well, that was I had a question around like your employer, and was it St. Mary's at the time, or because you did a stint at NSCC too, right?
Yeah. So I did the PR program at NSCC, which was like such an amazing experience.
Yeah. So was that
recommend.
who you were with when you kind of started this van experience?
So I work for a company called Talkatoo.
I remember.
Yeah. And they're a startup.
I remember the LinkedIn update.
Yeah. So I've been with Talkatoo for 4 years now, and we sell dictation software to veterinarians.
Okay.
So
to veterinarians.
Yeah. For charting their medical records.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So like a speech to text kind of type thing.
Exactly. It's powered by artificial intelligence.
As it should. Yeah.
Exactly.
So they were very supportive of this idea. Like that was my question. Like I knew you were traveling for work, and I was just wondering how did you bring it up to them? How was it? They were obviously supportive of the process. Can you bring me through kind of that?
Yeah, just planting the seeds, really. So, we're kind of an eclectic group. I got involved with this startup early on. So I was hired on as their first account executive / jack of all trades in the beginning.
All startups, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and, it's just like a really, really good company culture. I'd highly recommend to anyone who studied business or just kind of even interested about getting started in sales, like look for what kind of startup opportunities there are out there, because you will learn so much. I never even would have considered myself an entrepreneurial minded person before, but now having had this experience and have gone out on these like kind of crazy wild adventures, now I can see myself doing that and growing something that serves my personal purpose.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So throughout van life, you said they had 14 trade shows for you to go to.
Yeah.
So you started in Halifax?
Started in Halifax. Columbus, Ohio was the first destination. And I ended up going as far as San Antonio, Texas. And because it was like 14 trade shows, I was constantly on the move. So it was not the Instagrammable van life that, a lot of people expect.
Right.
And I didn't expect that either. I knew that this was like my kind of transformation journey, rite of passage, whatever it might be, like what vision quest in a sense. I don't know, but just kind of going out there on my own and accepting the challenge that it would be. And the biggest challenge, I think, was just facing myself every step of the way, because I was alone in this white box and it brought on a lot of anxiety, right?
Yeah, I would imagine. So, like, as you're traveling through, like, did you have any strategic stop points, or like, how did you kind of run your day to day, like, after work was done? Did you kind of have a plan, or did you kind of just like, oh, this place looks pretty good to pull over, and like that's kind of it? Like,
yeah.
Do you have any?
A lot of Walmarts,
insights?
a lot of Walmart parking lots and Planet Fitness parking lots.
It's like a country song.
Absolutely.
Right?
Those are the spots. You and Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of cities. So, and, I tried to plan along the journey, but I had no experience like with van life before this, with like maintaining vehicles, and like I was really unprepared for this journey. So
no real background in like any vehicle maintenance.
Yeah,
mechanics,
not really. Like I knew how to check my oil.
Yeah, hey, right.
Yeah, tire pressure good.
Yeah, probably in line with most of the population, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody has like a deep, vast like knowledge of vehicles unless they're like a mechanic or something. Like, I'm not great, but I know a few things. Like, I know sometimes what's going wrong, but how to fix it.
Yeah.
And
like didn't have a bathroom. My kitchen space was very small. So although I had big dreams of being this kind of like outdoor life, and it was that, like, I cooked outside and things like that, but as a solo female on the road, like, you got to be cautious, because I never knew the area that I was in. I was never familiar with it. So a lot of the time was just felt like, okay, you got this, you can do this. It's going to be okay. Like,
so where would you kind of go if you needed to kind of like get a hot shower or, kind of freshen up a little bit? Would you like hit the gym up? Or yeah. I figured
Planet Fitness was the go-to. Yeah. So it was wild,
man. Can you bring us through like maybe some of like your learnings throughout that, and maybe maybe some positive outcomes, and maybe some of the more negative stuff that maybe you didn't enjoy quite as much?
Yeah. Well, I chalk it all up to positive experience.
Well, that's a great mindset. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It was every step of the way, there were these signs and signals of like, okay, you're on the right track. And, this journey came to me post-pandemic. So obviously it was right after the pandemic and things were starting to open up again. But the fact that I was always moving meant that I didn't get a lot of time to kind of settle into places where I was likely to meet other van lifers.
Right.
So I met some people through work, of course, that were very supportive to me. And I had like just all these little instances that occurred along the way. So it started in Columbus, Ohio, where I was having a lot of anxiety about actually the authorities, because I was technically, it was kind of illegal doing what I was doing, Canadian, selling software out of the back of her like white camper van. And like they almost didn't even let me into the country, right? So question for like an hour, because I don't own land in Canada or property.
Right.
So like, ma'am, like what's keeping you coming back to Canada? Are you sure you're not trying to move here to the US? Like, oh no, this is just a dream of mine. Like, and downplayed that I actually was employed, and because, just trying to like make sure that I wasn't shooting myself in the foot so that I could actually get across the border. And so for some reason, that was just one of the anxieties I had in my mind, because, you know, you start to talk to people and they're like, oh, yeah, like if a cop pulls you over, it starts asking you questions or something like that. I'm like, oh, no. So
yeah, because you probably don't really think about it. It's just, I'm just going to pack it up and go.
Yeah.
But the Americans, they're way more apprehensive to let people in. Like,
well, I definitely
borders,
thought about
eh?
it, but,
Yeah.
you know, work had this thing that they wanted me to do. They believed it was possible. I believed it was possible. You just kind of have to, like, you know, fudge the truth a little bit at the border.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any, like, when we were out there and you're going, like, were there any, like, real, like, kind of hairy situations? Like,
No, nothing real. And yeah, so, and I think that's like part of the fact of just being a white girl on the road solo. Like it is eye-opening to that privilege, because everyone is so willing to help you. And so the moment I got over those anxieties, like I was just embraced by so many people. And it was like, again, these very kind of like kismet, unlikely experiences. So the first one was in Columbus, Ohio, when I pretty much intentionally, like subconsciously locked myself out of the van with everything inside, like my keys, my cell phone, everything. And, you know, the people that kind of came in to help me and eventually ended up with a couple of police officers and the fire department there to let me unlock my van for me. Which was so funny, because that was like the time where I was worried about that kind of encounter, and they could not have been more helpful and amazing. And I ended up bringing the fire department like donuts and stuff, and they were having pizza night with their kids.
oh, wow.
And all the while, like AAA was on the way, so there was really no need. Like I was like, I'm good, don't worry.
So, like, the mean American kind of, you know, that you hear about, like, people don't care as much in the States, that's not really, like, that true then. People are were very supportive of and helping.
Yeah, absolutely.
I shouldn't say that. I mean, I know a bunch of Americans, but... You know, you get to big cities and people are just more about their own business. And, like, you find, like, you know, for the limited travel I've had, like, you know, New York, Toronto, all that, it's like, you know, you don't kind of get that same kind of community feel, I found.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I spent a lot of time in the U.S. So, like, I still travel all the time for work. Now it's by plane, of course.
No more van.
Yeah. No, well, my partner has a van. So.
Right. You mentioned that. So maybe some more to come.
Exactly. We drove across Canada. Totally different experience. There's just not much out there.
Is that how you met?
No, we actually met at a festival, a small gathering of friends. So... yeah, that's been a big part of my evolution too. I'm just kind of all over the map, free spirit, and cultivating these connections. And so when he and I met, actually, I was like very much on this solo van life mission. Still knew I had a lot of inner work to do on like my codependency and healing from past relationships, and like this independent woman drive was so strong. I'm like, no, I got to go do this thing. I'm doing it by myself. You can't come. And that was around the same time, just before I found my van. He's like, okay, fine. I'll get a van and do my thing. And so we kind of ended up on these like two separate journeys of like finding ourselves. And that brought us, you know, back to each other in the end. And
wow.
I can tell you for certain that van life is so much better with a partner on the road. Totally different experience.
Yeah. Less anxiety.
A lot less anxiety.
You can be a little more dependent on, you know, each other, and kind of take some of that stress away of like, if you lock yourself out of your van again, at least you got somebody else to kind of lean on.
Exactly.
That's cool. So, I know you wanted to come on here and talk about like your current business and kind of what you've kind of been doing, I would say, as like on your own on the side. So, why don't you bring us a little bit through that? Like, what have you been up to?
Yeah. So actually, while I was on my van life adventure, I was also working on, it's where it kind of began, because I was working on my health coaching certificate. So like we touched on, I do come from that similar like bodybuilding background, and all of the really kind of unhealthy things that come along with it that for me started in childhood. So that my last bodybuilding show sent me into a tailspin that's taken me like a number of years to recover from, binge eating and over exercising and when the pandemic hit, I was able to kind of like heal the gym aspect because I knew I had to kind of cut off that source for myself first.
You didn't have a choice in the pandemic either, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I was running like 40 kilometers a week and still like working out at home. But eventually it tapered off because I'm like, okay, so I need to heal this. And the pandemic did help. But still like the binge eating kind of persisted after that. And, there was one point in my life where it was so bad that like all I could think about was eating food. Like where is it? I know it's around. How am I going to get it? I know there's a bakery down the street. There's that there. There's that there. There's that there. And then how am I going to burn it off? And so like it occupied my entire like mental space, and it was a dark place for a long time. And it's very frustrating when you know that you are the only thing standing in your own way too. And it's just like the way that your brain works and the neural wiring, right?
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that in my own experience. I mean, I'm a much smaller version of myself than I was back in those days. I would say even as far as going to say, like, I might have had a little bit of I think body dysmorphia. Is that kind of the right word?
Yeah,
like,
probably.
I grew up in rural Yarmouth County, and the biggest, strongest guy was the coolest. And that was kind of like what set that kind of tone early on in my childhood because, we didn't have a ton to do. We had this little, like, they called it the health club. It was just a little, like, old convenience store. They kind of, like, refitted and, like, put a bunch of homemade weights in and, like... That's kind of what me and my old buddy from high school used to do in our spare time. We'd like go work at the fish plant, and then we'd go lift weights. And I think it was him that actually kind of, when we were in university, I love to eat too, and we always did so much activity as kids that you kind of just ate whatever you want, burned it off. And I think we were just like, it was like YouTube was kind of getting a little bigger, and the internet, and like I remember seeing a video of like Ronnie Coleman, and he's like pressing like the 200-pound dumbbells, and I was like, who is that guy? And my buddy at the time knew he was a bodybuilder. I was like, oh, man, that'd be cool to maybe try sometimes. He's like, oh, man, you can't keep away from McDonald's for long enough to take a, like, diet down. And then I was like, that was like the switch. I was like, well, watch me do it. And then it started from there. And, I can tell you, I don't do it. I can't do it. Like some people ask me about like diet and counting calories. And it's like, I've done it for so long that like I don't even have the app on my phone. Because it's like you say, it's like my whole life was like, I have this many, that point in my life, in my early 20s into my later 20s, it was like, how many calories do I have to eat? What foods am I going to eat to achieve these macronutrients and micronutrients? And then it was like, I need to make it to my cheat day. And then it was like, what was that going to be?
Yeah.
And, it come to a point where like, I was so big for my size and to maintain, I had to like force feed myself. And that brought on a whole slew of like indigestion, GI tract issues. Like eventually I couldn't even hold food in. Like, so the last show that I didn't even come in as good as I could have because like, if everything's going out and that's going in, whether it's out this way or that way, like your body's off, like your electrolytes and everything are all over the place. And it was like, so I come third. And after that, I was like, man, I got to change something. And then I'd always been a strength athlete, more so, like I always lifted to be strong. And I'd started a bit I was training with a bunch of powerlifters, and that's kind of where I went after that. And then I tore my quad. And then I was like, man, this isn't sustainable. And, I had this idea, like probably all of us, like, we're going to be a pro bodybuilder or a pro powerlifter, and that'll be my thing.
Yeah.
And then you kind of realize that, I maybe could have made it. Like, I got pretty far, but it's like, to what cost? And you see the guys that are doing it. It's like, are they really happy or healthy? And, like, you never really know what's going on behind the scenes because, like, social media, for better or for worse, I try and use it for good now, but like social media does a great job of showing you everything good in everybody's life, and it doesn't really give you the opportunity to see like, well, what did it take to get that good thing? And like, what's really going on? Because nobody likes to show you the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So when I got out of it, it was like very much like I guess you'd probably call it like a bit of a loss of identity. Like I was this like strong, big guy, and like, I had achieved some pretty notable things in like a provincial level, national level in both powerlifting and bodybuilding. And it was like, I'm great at adding things to my life. I'm not good at letting go.
Yeah.
And that was where I really struggle. I still struggle. And that's the biggest thing for me is like accepting the change.
Yeah.
And making it and like keeping it. So yeah, it's, I can definitely relate that it's been, it wasn't a healthy few years. At the time when you're in it, it's like, when you're kind of enthralled with the industry and the people and you think it's all rainbows and sunshine, but at the end it's not quite.
Yeah. And I think I always knew deep down that I was getting into it for the wrong reasons, like the vanity and such. And because I had those like eating disorder tendencies from a very young age. And there's a lot of propaganda. You mentioned the social media and just like, media in general. I grew up like at this time when like all the celebrities had anorexia and, you could go, I had access to a computer. You could go on the internet and learn what they were doing to look the way that they looked. And so
just like wasn't eating.
Glorified it. Yeah, exactly. And so, and we see these things happening like in society and culture now, right? It looks different. And so, again, no regrets. And this is kind of where I come to this like realization of manifestation early on too, because I recognize that I manifested this, that it was like all intentional from the beginning, even though I implanted those subconscious beliefs and conscious beliefs. Even at the time when I was very young and I didn't know what I was doing, I carried those into adulthood to a point where at that point it didn't look like what I of course had imagined it was going to look like, and that I was getting recognition for it or anything like that. Although people in society still celebrate when you work hard towards a goal and you look fantastic, and obviously that's still very celebrated. But I knew it was wrong, and but at that point, my brain was so wired for it that it became very difficult to stop. And thankfully, I've had some really great relationships in my past and just people in my life that have helped me course correct and, sent me on more of like an inward journey of investigating the mind. And that's when I learned that, okay, like neuroplasticity is a thing, and actually you can use your conscious awareness to reprogram your mind, which is so cool. Like we're the only creatures that know how to do this in a sense, and is very, very powerful. So that's what made me interested in exploring health coaching and just adding to my repertoire of modalities that could help not only like compulsive eating behaviors, but also just kind of like compulsive thoughts and behaviors, things that people are experiencing, habits that they don't want to be, that are debilitating, but they can't seem to overcome their mind. And it's been a really powerful journey, and it's a journey where we're always going to be met with these things, and slowly building in the new habits is where the power lies. Because the other challenge is that people want this like instant change, right?
Everybody wants the quick fix.
Yeah.
No delayed gratification.
Yeah, exactly.
And you find like, what's the biggest challenge, like working with your clients? Like I know you kind of have this, like, I looked on your Calendly and you can have this like one-time kind of consultation in terms of like your transformative process. Like, can you bring me a little bit kind of how you identify like, who these people are, how you're going to approach kind of what they're going through? Do you have more like, do you take it all on, or do you have more like a specialty focus, like the diet portion or the lifestyle coaching, or is it kind of all kind of wrapped into one?
Yeah. So, I'm still kind of figuring out the specific direction that my coaching is going to take. And so, but I've been trained as a health and life coach. And so the approach is super cool because the coaching is very for the individuals that are receiving the coaching, it's it's very directed by them and their needs. And so by using the right questions to draw out what is the why underneath the why, who is the real you, and what is the ultimate goal that you're trying to get to. And okay, now we're going to create a vision for this and some anchors so that you're constantly reminded of that vision, and some action steps. And so it's really interesting, the things that come up, because of course the way we do one thing in life that seems to be that hindrance is often the way that we're showing up in a lot of our relationships. And so whether we're sacrificing ourselves or people pleasing, or just kind of like we're not giving ourselves that proof, like, you know, you got to prove it to yourself first. And so working on that self-integrity of like, okay, I'm going to do the thing that I say that I'm going to do. And it's going to be one small step, and it's going to take me closer to that goal. And then the coach's role is to help recognize, okay, what is that mirror? What are the challenges that are coming up in my life, in my reality? Is that a reflection of me? Is that something that I can change? Is that something that I can integrate? And then having the accountability and the champion in your corner, right? So as a coach, I'm there to help hold the vision, even when the vision for that person might be a little bit shaky. It's like, I have ultimate conviction in you that you can do this. I'm here alongside you. We're learning and growing from each other together. And so we're just taking that walk on that journey.
Yeah, and like through your journey of like figuring this out and helping people, do you see any like common denominators that are like consistent with the people you work with? Like, are they coming to you a lot with like similar things, or you know, I know a lot of times like people like to avoid doing the work that really needs to get done to kind of move on and develop to the thing that they want, but they don't really know how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So the process is really reframing, and looks different with each individual, but what people want is they want confidence, and there are different hurdles for each and every individual. But when they come up, by just asking really a question like, you know, what is it that I can help you with today? And why do you think this is showing up for you right now? And if you could eliminate this problem or overcome it, what would that do for you? And just continuing on that like investigative path. And then these things come up, these pain points, like a pain body, these triggers that we have to our environment, to the people around us. And they all come back to these core beliefs and these needs for like, you know, safety and love and feeling like fitting in and community and all that stuff. So these fears, it's all fear-based. So we have to reprogram the beliefs. So it's just offering reframe, right? And it comes up very intuitively when you're listening to someone share their journey. And it's like, okay, well, is there a way we can reframe that? And then once we have the reframe, how do we anchor it in? What's the action step that's going to help you so that you recognize this trigger and you know how to move past it?
Yeah, so it's very much just coaching them on how to kind of identify the problems and move forward. Yeah, I mean, you know, I can definitely speak from like, you know, some people are like, oh man, I can't believe that you know, put so much content out there, or I could never do that. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of getting over that fear. And I think we think people care a lot more about like our day-to-day life. And like, you know, it's not like everybody's just got this like lens, or they're just on their Instagram, just watching what we're doing. I think it's like you say, fear is a very prevalent portion of most of our lives, and I think it's what drives some people, and I think it's what holds some of us back. And yeah, it's great to have like folks that are out there trying to do some good and help some people. Can you kind of speak to some of the kind of items kind of in your toolbox that you can that you've kind of amassed through this journey to kind of help these people?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any, you know, specific strategies, or you know, training wise, do you provide any diet specific guidance or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of nutritional guidance, right? So just educating people on the basics of nutrition, which I think is very helpful. Like, what is the quality of the food that we're eating? How do we read nutrition labels, that sort of thing? A lot of people do want you to just tell them, right? Tell them what to eat, tell them how many macros, etc. Exactly. And so that's not what this approach is all about. We want to get to the why underneath the why. And so for a lot of people, women especially, and like my focus is working with women.
That was another one of my questions. But.
It's not even, I want to focus in the beginning about how you eat. Yes, what you eat is important. So here's a list of some things and, meal prep ideas and meal ideas. Like, people are so stuck a lot of times, I'm noticing, and like just feeling like they're overextending themselves because they're taking in so much and they don't know how to filter it out. And so you got to start to be able to put up some of those boundaries first.
When you say taking in so much, you mean like information or input from other people?
Yeah, it depends on their lifestyle, right? So it could be people in their life or their job or, even just social media. I think we all find ourselves caught in these traps where it's like, oh my God, I just wasted all this time where I should have been maybe cooking dinner. Like there's very few people I know that even cook nowadays. I know. Yeah. So we got to start there and build the habit gradually. So like if you're not cooking, okay, let's start just eating whole food and just changing the habit a little bit at a time, making switches or like alternatives. So that's one step. Another big one is recognizing how you're eating and who you're being when you're eating. I'm very addicted to podcasts and spent a lot of time alone. So like how many people eat in front of the TV or listening to the radio, listening to a podcast, all that kind of stuff. And we're sitting at our computer and we're working and you're just shoveling it down. People don't recognize that they're not chewing their food. That's the first step of the digestion process.
Yeah, I'm bad for that.
Yeah.
So if I'm real hungry, it's just like, and swallow. It's terrible. And then I get like indigestion and it's like, well, you kind of eat like a seagull, Chris. Like, so what do you expect?
Mm-hmm. 2 bites. It's just like if you just had to, open up the stomach and shove it right in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's not good. So that's definitely something I could admit that I have to be more conscious of. My wife gets after me all the time. Like, she chews like almost too much. Like, if you ask me. Not that it's like, anyway, it's just like something funny that I noticed. Because like, I'm like, I'll be done eating and she's still like halfway through, but like it's just been a thing since I've been a kid. Like my parents never starved me. Like we always had food, and that was one of the things like Dad always said, like, you might not have the best hockey gear or you might have to work for, this, that, and the other thing, but when it comes to like food in the house, the fridge and the freezers, we were fortunate. They were always full. I know some people are not as fortunate, but like Dad, I would always say like, man, like slow down. Like we're going to buy more food. So you find like people kind of get, like you say, like you got to kind of recognize who you are when you're eating. Can you kind of expand a little bit about that? Like, podcasting and eating, like do you find like that promotes overeating or maybe they're undereating or like you say, they're not chewing enough and that can provide a host of either positive or negative kind of outcomes?
Yeah, well, we're distracted, right? So and a big one is work for a lot of people. So not taking a break to have, be present with your food, be present with your lunch. And so some of the strategies I teach are even just a little bit of breath work before a meal to help calm the nervous system, because we want to be in a state of rest and digest to actually assimilate our food, digest it properly, take it in, because otherwise that's where you get these host of digestion and autoimmune disorders, and we're not absorbing the nutrients of our food properly if we're in this stressed out state. Right. And women were wired for survival. And so people, I think now are really kind of starting to become aware of their nervous systems. And if you're drinking coffee, like I had a coffee the other afternoon and I was like, so like I could really feel it. And I was like, oh man, I should not have had that coffee because now I'm like all activated. Right.
I can feel that.
Yeah.
I drank a whole French press this morning because anyway. And I went to the office and I was just like,
Yeah.
But I can definitely attest to like my bad habit is I'll like not stop. Like because I can just go and like through the bodybuilding thing, like I taught myself, like I tell you when to eat. Mm-hmm. You don't tell me. I like the mind.
Yeah.
So like my mind is stronger than like the physiological like requirement or need. Like when my body's like, hey, you're hungry. hey, I'm just like, yeah, I'm busy. And I'll just keep driving towards whatever I'm doing. And then all of a sudden I notice that I'm anxious. And then maybe, or maybe I'll drink more coffee to kind of kill the hunger down. And then it's like a dual prong thing. Like, I'm jacked up on caffeine. I'm hungry. I'm anxious because I'm too caffeinated. And then I'm kind of hangry because I haven't ate. And then all of a sudden I'm kind of caught here thinking like, what do you feel like this for? And then I'll actually be like, oh, it's 2:30, almost 3 o'clock, and you haven't had more than coffee and a banana, or maybe just coffee. And people often ask me if I do intermittent fasting, and it's like not by choice. It's just like I get up, I get a coffee, I go to jiu-jitsu, I come home, and like I got this routine where I need to walk the dogs ASAP because nobody's going to walk them other than me, or, well, until Caitlin gets home, and she walks them, and then I do that, and then by the time that's done, I'm like, okay, well, I need to hammer down into some work because it's 9:30, and then it kind of perpetuates this cycle of like, you're just kind of aroused and kind of anxious, and things aren't like so even, and it kind of, I can get a lot of stuff done, but it's not always in like the best state of mind. Not that it externalizes to like other people, but yeah, it's just kind of like this internal kind of battle with myself of like, okay, you should eat. It's like, well, you're too busy. You got all this stuff to do. Mm-hmm. So I prioritize the tasks over like my own well-being. So I think that's my biggest issue. Yeah. But do you find that's kind of similar, like, or do women more take the time, or?
No, I think, first, if it's something you want to change, you got to recognize it. The awareness is the first part, right? So the people that are coming to me, they either hear me talk about my journey of being like addicted to sugar and carbs. And like, for me, it was a coping mechanism for like feelings and stress, right?
So it made you feel good.
Yeah,
all this
exactly.
sugar,
And
like the sugar rush and all that.
Oh yeah. I would eat myself to just points of being like so sick. And I would have like a hangover the next day, like, just still feeling so sluggish and terrible. And
because the insulin spikes and the sugar.
Oh yeah.
The crash.
Oh yeah. And then like, if anything got in my way of the exercise that I was planning to do, or maybe like the fasting that I was planning to do the next day to mitigate that, then I would have a full on freak out. So like I was deep in it, I knew that I needed a change. And, a lot of the women that have come to me, they see certain elements of my life, like this adventure, this carefreeness, this cultivating of these relationships and these connections. And, I come by my openness by nature, I think. And then I've worked on like expanding that throughout my life and the experiences that I've had. And so, I can share some of that lived experience with them and start to like draw it out and be like, okay, what are the things you actually want? I know you have goals to kind of transform your habits and your lifestyle, but what is that going to give for you? What's the end goal? And how are we working towards that? And how are you showing up to honor yourself and integrate the parts of you that maybe you think that are bad, because they're not, and there's actually nothing wrong with you. And that was the trap that I was in for so long, thinking that I had to fix this problem. I'm broken. There's something that I need to fix. And then the moment I realized like, oh, you're not broken, you're perfect. And like this part of your experience is actually where your power lies. And so if you embrace it rather than, kind of resist it, then that's where the transformation piece happens. And so we can work on these small habits and celebrate them, and we'll have these like small wins that start to rewire the brain. And it actually doesn't take that long. I think people think that, it's this almost impossible process, because you're thinking that you're broken.
Right. So people they're almost defeated before they even begin to try and start to get themselves out of it, where they're like, well, this is where we are now. This is life. Like, this is reality, and there's no getting away from it. And they just never start the process to kind of.
Yeah. And when we believe that about ourselves, we project it out. And so then we get the confirmation back from the reflections around us. So, it becomes a very strong belief. Of course, you're going to believe that.
Yeah, because if you're putting it out there and it's coming back, then like, why wouldn't you believe that this is you? This is the...
And that's how the mind works. That's how manifestation works. And so, yeah, duality, I think, is like the reality, the fabric of our existence, right? And so it's always yes and. So what's that and? What's that piece of discovery that's out there waiting for you? And that's going to help you kind of understand and be able to relate to other people, because yes, they might be this way and it might be annoying you or pestering you or whatever it is. What's the and? What's the part that you can't see? And it's always out there. It's out there to be found. It's what I've found on my adventures and my journeys, and just getting confirmation. When you start to believe in things that are out there for you, then that's the reflection that you'll get back. And it's so magical. And that's what gives me this belief in, like, you know, magic and manifesting, because it can be whatever you want. That's life. But it's out there waiting to be experienced.
Yeah, you know, no offense, because I'm into it now, like 100%. But I always thought, like, you know, growing up in a rural Yarmouth County, like, grew up pretty blue collar, and like anything that was like manifestation or meditate, it was like pretty hokey, and everybody just thought it was like, you know, it was kind of out there. Like, and like my first experience with like manifestation, because, you know, let's be real, the last 3-4 years, and like even today with all the issues overseas, you know, I think there's a lot of people in some dark spots. And, you know, when you lose your job, and, you know, not saying my loss is any bigger or worse than what's going on, but like, it's just my experience. Like, you know, you lose your job, you know, Caitlin and I got our first dog, Thor, lost him in the pandemic. You know, so again, like coming from like the bodybuilding powerlifting world, I had to like kind of rewire myself that, you know, chapter's over. It was what it was. And now you got to move forward. And there's a bit of identity loss there. And then, you know, it wasn't even that like 3 or 4 years prior to that, you know, then fast forward, we're into, you know, what I just went through with the job loss and the dog and the pandemic. And, you know, there's a lot of self-work to kind of get out of that kind of rut. And, like, it was like, you know, a lot of, like, why did this happen to me? And the kind of, you know, you're mad because, you know, you lost your job that you thought, you know, you got brought up. If you work real hard, you'll always have a job. And, you know, and then you take in this beautiful animal that you kind of raise as your kid. And, you know, you do everything you thought was right. And then even though you did everything right, that gets taken from you. So, yeah, there was a pretty low point in my life where I had to be like, listen, like, something's got to give here. So I really started, like, you know, meditation. That kind of helped a lot. And, you know, that goes back to, like, you know, that's something that you just got to keep doing, because it's not like something that you get real immediate gratification from. And it's very much delayed. And I think some people that meditate say that they're not really good at it, and it's a lifelong kind of journey to kind of master kind of the mind and emotions and all that good stuff. But like manifestation, yeah, I'm journaling, and I found, you know, if you're always starting the day with positive affirmations and ending with them, it kind of rewires you to be. That's how you start your day, and that's how it ends. So if you start with positive and you end with the positive, well, it's a lot easier to live the day on a positive note. And anyway, that's a kind of a drawn out kind of explanation to my manifestation experience. But I'm going on a moose hunting trip next week in Cape Breton. I put in for the draw every year. For those that don't know, there's usually around like 13,000 people that put in for the lottery, and that's how they do it, is by lottery. And then they only draw 345 tags, or at least that's how many they drew this year. I don't know if that's a standard. I forget to check year over year, but so it's a very small portion that get to go. And I'm a very calendar driven person. Like, I need to plug it in to see, and that's how I work my life. So I was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool? I'm 35 on the 31st of this month. And this was back in July. I was like, wouldn't it be cool to go moose hunting like through my 35th birthday? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to put in my calendar. It was like season 6, zone 5, which was like October 30th, November 4th. I was like, I'm going to put it in there so I don't schedule anything in that time frame. It's at a good point in like the real estate kind of life cycle that things will be kind of slowing down a little bit. We're still in a bit of a fall market, but I was like, I'll plug it in there. Probably not going to win, but at least it'll be there just in case. And sure enough, I get the email at the end of July when they do the draw. It's like, hey, Chris, check your lotto ballot to see if you won. And sure enough, winner. And I had to like refresh it to like check and be like, is that right? It says winner. And I was like, man. And that was kind of my first experience. I was like, I think I made that happen in a sense, where I just had it in my mind that it was in the calendar. It's going to happen. We're going. And lo and behold, I won. So now, like, everything I put in the calendar, like, it's like, might not be such as manifestation like that, but like, you know, I find if you keep organized and you kind of believe and you plug stuff in, like, it gets done. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I had to learn, like, creating space for me. And I've had a bad habit of and I still am bad for it. Like, I'll give even to people that don't appreciate it, or maybe I don't even realize they don't appreciate it until it's like time for, like, you know, maybe I need some help, or maybe my feelings need to get considered instead of theirs for a change. And it's been a pretty eye-opening experience that even though you give so much of yourself to anybody really that needs it, that they don't always appreciate it as much as you think. And it's often not reciprocated.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people like to take. And I don't think there's a lot of people that give out there. To the degree, at least, that I feel that they could reciprocate back, whether it's in their immediate relationships or their friends or whatever. It's so that's kind of one of the things I had to learn, is like, it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do these things because these people are doing it. And, you know, it's okay to do stuff that's outside the norm or that your friends don't do.
Absolutely. Yeah. The no is a hard one. I've been working on my no a lot recently too, or just having the shadow projection come up, being like, you overextended yourself here. You are not in your authenticity here. And therefore, for me, it ends up like I get overwhelmed and then I draw back and I'm like, well, now the intention that I had is not even present at all. And I've like messed up this situation. But back to the manifestation piece, there's so many elements to it. And it's unfortunate that it's kind of getting a bad rap these days, or people don't really understand it. There's a lot going on. We're all manifesting all the time. Like, our existence is a manifestation. It's like, it's energy work. And so it's a lot more than just creating the thoughts. Like, you did a lot more in that instance. You created the space. And the mistake a lot of people make is that they get too attached to the end result. And that was kind of me with the van life, in a sense. It didn't work out the way that I had imagined it initially because I was pushing too hard for it. I still got an amazing gift and reward out of it. But as I started going out into the universe and playing with these kind of energies and these tools of manifestation and being open, I'm an open book. My energy is open. It is crazy. Like the people that have come in and like stood next to me and started telling me things that are just absolutely mind-blowing. I'm like, where did you come from?
Right.
You know, it's just like, so that you give off this open energy that's magnetic. It's magnetism. It's energetics. And so, you know, a big part of it is letting go of the attachment to the outcome. And even when we're, you know, dealing with people, if we're attached to the outcome or the thing that we expect that we're going to get, manifestation is not about the end goal. It's about the journey. It's about the life lessons. It's not about the things that you're going to bring in. It's about the feelings that you're going to have. It's about that personal evolution of like reaching that next level of consciousness where your space is more open for things to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny, we're talking about manifestation, and I'm going to go this year because I have a newfound respect of, like, since I've been doing a lot of my own work and a little bit of my own kind of soul-searching journey and through meditation and journaling. And I had some clients I was working with. I'll share a story. I won't name them, but they're great people, and we've grown to be newfound friends, I guess, through the process. And, through my first part of my real estate entrepreneurial journey, we'll call it, like, I'm a pretty driven person. So obviously, I wanted to get back to, my status or my income level that I was with Unilever. So maybe didn't have the best approach at first, maybe a little bit too transactional. But at the end of the day, I'm a pretty big relationship guy. Like, I like to have good relationships. And like I said, and if you're in my sphere, like, I will do as much as I can to help you if I have the ability. Now, today, if I can't, I'm more vocal around, like, being able to say no if I can't, instead of overcommitting myself. And like you say, maybe you found like you're just overwhelmed and then you take a step back. But anyway, I was working with these clients, and the market's challenging, and it was a much busier market when we were slugging away out there. And it kind of got to a point where I could see they were kind of losing steam, and they weren't really sure, I think, if they were going to be able to make it happen and find a house. And, they had 2 dogs, and unfortunately in the new world here, it's all fixed term leases. So before just the end of their lease, the landlord was like, hey, I know your dogs are great, not allowing dogs anymore. So they were under kind of that time crunch. And it was a lot of pressure for them. And then the market added another layer. And yeah, I could kind of see that, like, we might not be able to get it done due to, a series of different reasons. And anyway, one day they called me and they're like, listen, we found a home, but it's a private sale. And they're like, we're going to take it, but we just wanted to let you know that we really appreciate all your time, but, we got to take this deal because it just works for us. And anyway, the point of the story is the girlfriend from the couple that I was helping was like, I was like, you know what? First off, I was like, awesome. If that's the house for you, do it. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But I really appreciate that you guys were concerned enough to tell me, because some people just ghost you and they'll buy whatever they want and
yeah,
screw you, see you later. Like, it's all for, just like I said, some people, it's all for them. So it's cool to see, like, people like just genuine enough to kind of be open enough to let me know and be respectful enough to, thank me for the time and efforts and all the offers we wrote and the showings we did. But she's like, yeah, honestly, Chris, she's like, I was having a tough time visualizing this working. So she's like, I made a vision board. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, yeah. And I put, like, the center of it was like, we're getting a house by X date. And then she had, I don't know what else was on it. I can't remember. She showed me it, but she's like, yeah, I just, like, that was the goal. And every day I'd look at it and I knew we were working with you. And then all of a sudden this opportunity come up. And she was like, well, and it was like all the things they wanted, like the 10. Usually I tell my clients, like, if you have like a top 10 checklist and we can get like 70% of it, so 7 out of 10, like, that's probably the one. Well, she was like, this house had like all the 10. And anyway, so it gave me kind of a newfound respect for vision boards and manifestation. And, like, so the point of the story is when I first joined Remax, my mentor, Naz, one of the brokers at Remax, one of the co-owners, he had hosted a vision board party for the agents.
Oh, really?
And, obviously we're all invited, and we had to RSVP so they could have enough, like, magazines and different things so you could cut it out and put it on a board. And I had intentions of going, and then all of a sudden I was just like, And this was, before I experienced this with these people. And it was even prior to getting like my moose ticket drawn. I was just like, that's just a waste of time. And now it's like I had a little experience on myself. It wasn't quite a vision board, but it was like my calendar was kind of a type of vision board, I guess. And then that kind of story from, my clients, which are now friends, it kind of gave me a newfound respect that, like, I think really what we put out there is like the energy will get back. So if you're always positive thinking, starting your day with positive affirmations, realizing that, you are good enough, and finishing the day with what was great instead of just like focusing on the crap.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to have the bad stuff come through. But I think it's important, at least from my perspective and my experience, like the more good you can focus on, the more good you can put out there, and the more good you can do makes you feel better. And I think you get a lot more back than just treating life as like a transactional process where it's all about you and what you want and what you're going to get. And that's it. So it's been a very like 360 kind of life in the last little bit here on my attitude and how I approach things. And to be honest, I've been doing better than ever. Physically, mentally, relationship-wise. Like, not that Caitlin and I ever had huge issues, but like, working on being more present, putting the phone down.
Yeah.
And being there and she's kind of the center. So, and for a while, I think I put other things at the center. And I don't think it was like, not that she ever, made me feel in a way that she needed to be, but I don't know, you kind of refocus and recenter yourself and you realize what's important and what's been neglected. And, I think if a lot of people just kind of took stock of that and maybe, especially women that might be having struggles and different things, I think if a lot of people did more mindfulness work, I think we'd be in a lot better place.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that you're integrating some of these things into your life now. And, there's real science behind this stuff. Like, and to give people some tangible takeaways, when we do the visualization practice, whether it's a vision board or you're just kind of doing this repetition, bringing it to your mind's eye through meditation or through hypnosis, the things are already out there for us, but we're helping our minds to recognize them when we see them. So we see the opportunity, we realize that's the thing I've been going after. That's the thing that's meant for me. Versus when we don't do that internal reflection, we don't know. We're just like slinging, spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah,
and
see if it sticks.
Exactly. And like there's so much more that goes into this than people hear about in their little tiny snippets on Instagram and things like that. And so there's a lot that you can play around with and practice. And we're co-creators with the universe as well. And I think that's one of the parts that gets misconstrued. It's like, you're not the all-powerful. You can create a lot of things. And if you were to take stock of your life, you'd recognize that you're the driving force in all of it. And then there are the situational things that happen to us. And so can we be a little bit more prepared for how we're going to react when, life gets difficult? What is the challenge? What is being asked of me now? How do I respond? How do I show up for others? How do I be that shining light, that beacon, and cultivate more of that energy? And the positive stuff, absolutely. But a lot of my practice is actually looking at the shadow. And because if we're not aware of what we're holding in our shadow, then we're subconsciously projecting that out. And that's why it's getting projected back to us. So for me, part of my mantra and daily ritual is, hey, look, Kiersten, these are all the dark parts of you that if you're seeing it come up, that is a call to question of what am I putting out and how am I integrating that? How is that a reflection of me? How is this a call to do more of the work?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I was to share probably my kind of, I don't know if you call it toxic trait or my darker part of me is like, and no offense to my parents or anything, like they're great parents, but there was definitely a high degree of like, performance was required. So I got brought up that like I was never good enough or was never quite at the level that I should have been. And I think for better or for worse, that's the drive that I have to get through like the mental part of bodybuilding, the dieting, getting through those big workouts in powerlifting, taking on things like jujitsu, which are tough, or running long distances, or, whatever it is. It was like, that thing of like, I always had something to prove. To who? No idea. Myself, everyone else. And everybody thought, like, for the most part, it was great. It was doing all this stuff. Oh, Chris, you're always like doing all these things, and you're always like trying to be the best, or the best you can be, and you're always getting after it. And it's like a lot of people seen that as like a positive thing, whereas like, inside it was like, I don't know if I could ever do enough.
Yeah.
So some of like my affirmations are like, hey, like you are loved, you are good enough, you will achieve and succeed your goals. Like, you're not good enough. Like and I guess getting out of that like negative self-talk of like not being good enough or not feeling good enough or never being, top of the list or whatever. I think that kind of eats away at you a little bit, and it kind of, you kind of live in that, well, I'm not good enough kind of mindset, and it can externalize out in not the great ways, and, definitely ruin some relationships. I've made some great ones, but, it's been kind of a journey of, realizing that I am good enough, and Chris can be, what he wants to be, as long as it's applied accordingly. And, that's where all the mindfulness work and the meditation, and I don't even care. I go to therapy. Like,
yeah, me too. Therapy, coaching, we're
all of it,
up leveling, right?
All of it. And anybody support. That like, and anybody that like scoffs at that, like, you haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, definitely.
So at least at this chapter, like I'm all about, leveling up mentally. I mean, physically, I've been doing that for years, but now it's like the mental work to be there for, Caitlin. Right now we only have furry kids. So, for them, for my family, and, whoever needs me out there, my clients. And I think it's been an overall better me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we all share these things. So it's not only happening for us personally, but it's happening in our collective unconscious, which I think is, why it's important during these times, because we need to recognize that we actually do have this power over our minds, over our thoughts, over our situations, over our reality, that we're not victims of our circumstance, that we're not out there jockeying for the victim position, that we're actually coming together in love and light because we're bringing that shadow to light. We're owning up and taking responsibility for the things that are ours so that we can rewrite our story, because I think that like the health of your narrative dictates the health of your life, but we have to bring that to our awareness first, and that's where coaches and therapists and loved ones and just having an open approach to it and being willing to get vulnerable and look at the hard stuff, that's how we transform it. So that's the transformation journey that we're all on.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, though, you come up from that like kind of hard-nosed, kind of blue-collar upbringing, you feel like, well, that's not what a man is. I can't do that. And, it brings me back to this quote that I've come across like several times. I don't know if the algorithm keeps feeding me it because I keep scrolling some of these motivational things, but like I might not nail it exactly, but I think the meat of it is, what we desire, is often found in the work that we're avoiding to do.
I've not heard that one before.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people are stuck. They want what they want, but they're avoiding the real work that has to be done to get there. And I think that's where people get mad and sour and then start pointing fingers at, or the poor me, why me? I had a friend that was always, why me? Why can't I get a job? Why can't I do this? Why does this person have more than me? And it was always trying to figure out why they had what they had. And I don't even think they realized it. They're not really around anymore. But I think if they spent more time kind of looking inward, they might have found some more reasons aside from, why everybody else had more than he did.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of that kind of complacency and apathy here, in Nova Scotia and Canada. Like, people are so used to the status quo and things being comfortable for a long time that they're not recognizing what we have here. And that, the feelings of success come from actually completing something that's difficult and going out and achieving. So, hopefully, like, we can just kind of help to illuminate what we've got here that's so great. And I know that's what you're doing with this podcast and the Halifax Network. And that's why it speaks to me so much. I love it because I've traveled a lot, and Halifax is truly one of the most incredible cities in the entire world. We have a lot of privilege, but the problem is that I think, and I've recognized this a lot throughout my life, and I've actually let it keep me stuck. It's what's halted me is like my feeling of shame for that, my survivor's guilt. Why do all these sound so silly, right? But how come all these great things happen to me and everyone around me is struggling and sad and depressed?
Right.
And like, I feel guilty for that. I feel shame for that. And so that's been part of my process of just like, no, this is my gift. I can help draw this out in people. I can help them recognize their gifts. And I just came to the realization recently. It's like, yes, I have white privilege. I have privilege of like circumstance of, where I live and how I was raised. And I've always been grateful for the struggles and the traumas that I've experienced early in life. But I used to say to myself, well, yeah, it was pretty traumatic, but, could have been worse. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like,
Right.
you don't have a voice to stand on. Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And that's not true. I do have earned privilege. I've worked hard. I've gone after the things that I've wanted. And that's what's given me the faith to continue to pursue my dreams. And so I know people feel disconnected from purpose, but, you don't, it's about how you live your life and how you show up. It's not some shiny thing that is obscure and unreachable. It's on the inside.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that. This podcast is definitely to highlight awesome people doing great things. And, I really appreciate that sentiment. And I guess that's kind of a great place to kind of, wrap it up. But if you had any advice for people kind of feeling any kind of way or, they want to start their mindfulness journey, what would be a couple tips to get them started, maybe even before they reach out to you?
Yeah. I think find what resonates with you. We live in these times where there's a lot of content out there. Find what kind of message, get inspired. Who's inspiring you? And rather than feeling like you can't have that thing and that it's not meant for you, that's actually a clear sign and a signal that that's your path. And if someone else has done it, you can do it too. So learn as much as you can about that thing, ask questions, get curious, play, experiment, have fun, embrace those kind of like childlike, feelings of wonder and joy and excitement. You'll find a lot of answers there.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're absolutely right. If we kind of took on more of that like childish mindset and like, appreciated things like through the lens that when we were once young, I think we'd definitely be in a better place. So where can people reach out to you? What's the best way to get a hold of you if they need to get beyond the first few tips?
Yeah. So Instagram is the easiest place. Hopefully it's not too difficult for people to find, but it's Kiersten, Kiersten. I guess I'll spell it all out now.
Yeah.
It's pretty long. Kiersten, and then Hacktrix, Hacktrix.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you so much, Chris.
We'll have you back again. We'll see what we're up to when you get a little deeper into your practice.
I would love that. I appreciate it so much.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.